This episode, we channel our inner emo and give some time to death and dying, plus our picks of the week. The Catholic Underground starts now. We all have an inner emo.
I do.
You've hit play on the Catholic Underground, where the podcast cutting through the noise and bringing you the topics that matter. It's episode number 457, for those of you who are keeping track. I'm Father Chris Decker, a priest of the Diocese of Baton Rouge in Louisiana. And joining me, we got Kathleen Lee.
I am.
That's
here.
Right. There she is. That's right. Olivia Gulino is on assignment this episode. And if we want to, because we're that type of person, aren't we?
Yep.
Let's go up to space.
All right.
And as we go up to space, and I don't think it's a space elevator. It's just a standard issue, low Earth orbit satellite.
Yep.
And that's where we find Jeff Blackwell. Hey, Jeff.
Yeah, who is asking, what the heck is an inner emo?
Inner emo?
Yeah.
Well, an outer emo would be the cassock I'm wearing, I guess. I don't know. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right. I'll play along.
Emo being the genre of music that is hyper emotional.
Oh, I'm with you now.
Yeah, usually kind of mopey.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which I like that kind of music.
Yep.
Ed Ball's in the ball pit running the video for us for this episode. So if you're listening to us in podcast form, we also do video, as you know, catholicunderground.tv or .com or wherever fine podcasts are videoed.
Yeah. I like it.
Like that.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Well, it is indeed All Hallows Eve as we are coming on the air. Mm-hmm. And we opted not to wear costumes because I wear a costume every day.
I just didn't have time to pick one out.
That's true. Yeah. I figure one year we'll do a costume.
That'd be fun.
Based show.
Well,
you know.
But since we talked rosaries last week, I wore my shirt, which says, never underestimate a guy who prays the rosary.
It's very true.
He finds honor through Mary.
That's true. Yeah, the rosary is nothing to be messed around with if you don't want things to happen, you know?
Anyway.
Yeah, and as we move our way through October into November, we remember most especially All Saints on the 1st of November. And it's interesting, All Saints Day was one of the feasts of the church that comes to us really early on, but it really kind of stuck in the year 609 AD when the Pantheon was consecrated as a Christian church. So in Rome, the Pantheon was this building that was given over to all of the gods known and unknown, right? And so they were trying to worship all the pagan gods all at once. And whenever it was consecrated as a Christian church, it's under the title of Saint Mary and all the martyrs.
Ooh, yeah.
And so it was Pope Boniface IV gave 13 May 609 was the original kind of day of All Saints, and then it was moved to November 1st.
Oh. Mm-hmm. Is that, I know that there's a lot of conversation about some of these holidays being moved more towards like to combat maybe like some pagan holidays.
Sometimes, yeah. In this case, it was moved to November 1st because Pope Gregory III built an oratory, so like a side chapel for all confessors and martyrs, and he said that he wanted Mass to be celebrated there on November 1st. And so the current date that we have for All Saints Day in the 800s was kind of codified there.
Okay, yeah, cool.
But sometimes you do find that some of the feast days of Christian saints and some major Christian feasts do coincide with some of the other pagan beliefs, or I should say, to overwrite some of the pagan worship.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So All Souls Day is something that we remember the day after All Saints Day. So All Saints are all of those who have achieved heaven, right? So all of our capital ST saints, as we say. Yeah. And All Souls Day would be the practice of offering Mass for the dead, for all of the deceased. And that's been a constant practice throughout the history of the church. Even if you look in the early days of the church, where we would go on kind of, you could say, the birthday, right? The everlasting birthday of the deceased, and the Mass was offered for them. And oftentimes this was done on the tomb itself. So in the catacombs, the very first Masses, the liturgy was celebrated on the marble slab or on the top of the graves of the martyrs.
Yeah, I that's the one part of church history that I love. Is the beginning of the church when they were having to practice underground, and where did they celebrate Mass? Where did they gather? Yeah. But with those that had gone before them, and were they were literally with the witnesses that had preceded
who had just given
them.
themselves, given their lives for the faith. And that really is where it ties into how we as Christians view death.
Right.
Because death without Christ is not being alive for a long time, you know. But because Christ enters into death and transforms it by conquering it, all of a sudden that means that what you see in the early church, the early church saying, well, we're going to go into the catacombs because we know that our brothers and sisters who are lying asleep right now, this isn't the end.
Right.
And so we're going to offer Mass for the sake of their soul because we believe that that has effect.
Right.
And the church has always taught that that has effect. Even in the Old Testament, in the book of Maccabees, there is this notion of praying for the dead. And so that is something that continues on. And so the church that we have today, whenever the priest goes to Mass and reverences the altar by kissing it, one of the things that he's doing is he's kissing the relic that is in the altar stone.
Yeah.
So Mass today is still a connection with those early days of the church.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't know that. I did not know that until probably maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, that that there are relics in the in an altar.
Yeah.
And I love that connection between and I've always loved the image of when we celebrate Mass.
Yeah.
It's not just the priest and those who are there, but
Right.
we that heaven touches earth,
Right.
and that all are present. And I love that when people say, I'll see you in the Eucharist, that you can say, look, I celebrate with you, even though you're not here. I celebrate with those who have passed on.
The veil is drawn back at the altar.
And I've always loved that image. And it's such a connection between, not just heaven and earth, but the past and the present and, and the church more than universal.
That's right. The church in her grandest form, right? In the most universal form, which would be the church triumphant.
Yeah.
Certainly those souls who are in heaven. The church suffering, so those in purgatory, those awaiting heaven. And then the church militant, that's us, those who are fighting on, working out our salvation in fear and trembling.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so part of the way that we work out our salvation in fear and trembling is by contending with the fact that one day we must die.
Yeah. That's
true. Scott Hahn, Dr. Hahn is the great Catholic apologist. He came into the church a number of years ago now, and since then has been almost kind of like a new Thomas Aquinas.
Yeah.
He very much in the spirit of that, kind of trying to be catechetically open to the way in which the church believes, how she believes, and why she does so. And he says that Catholics are accused of being obsessed with death, but we're not. He says we're obsessed with the resurrection.
Yeah.
And that's really the key through which we begin as Christians to look at death.
Sure.
Of course, we look back in history, death is always something that we have meditated upon, even before Christ.
Right.
Death is always something that is mysterious. And so it works its way into many epics. And of course, certain cultures have a way in which they view death, honorable, dishonorable, that sort of thing.
Sure.
I think one of the poems that I learned in high school was Robert Herrick's "To the Virgins to Make Much of Time." It's really kind of a meditation upon youth, and then that it doesn't last forever. Gather ye rosebuds while ye may, old time is still a-flying, and that same flower that smiles today, tomorrow will be dying. The glorious lamp of heaven, the sun, the higher he's a-getting, the sooner will his race be run, and nearer he's to setting. So there's this notion that even in kind of popular culture, we do wonder about death.
Yeah. Well, that's all. I mean, that's always the question is like, what, any young person I've ever talked to, well, what does it look like? And my answer is always, I can tell you what we believe as Christians. I don't know. I've never been there. And that is always any movie that you see or
an attempt to artistically portray it.
It's always interesting how there are so many different beliefs and there are so many different ideas about what happens.
Yeah, and the thing about it is because death is mysterious to us, we have the opportunity to allow artistic license to speak a little bit.
Sure.
But we know certainly that as Catholics, we are called to look at it in the notion of what we as Catholics believe about death and dying. Yeah. And so the Catechism tells us, quite simply, that death is the end of earthly life. Right? So that's pretty cut and dry. It's the end of our earthly life. Our lives are measured by time, in the course of which we change, we grow old, and as with all living beings on earth, the Catechism says death seems like the normal end of life. The aspect of death lends urgency to our lives. And I think that that's important to note, that because we know that we will die, there is, even from the moment that we are children, and certainly once we get to our teenage years, we kind of become aware of that urgency within our life.
Right.
And so there's this kind of animating element, if you will, with knowing that the end of our earthly life does have, there is a kind of hard stop at some point for our earthly life, or what we know of it.
Yeah. I remember growing up, and the first time you really experience death and can understand what's going on, and somebody, somebody in your life dies, or maybe even somebody young dies, and you're, that whole realization that, okay,
wow, yeah.
like this is something is, there is going to be an end to this.
That's right.
And so what does that mean in my mean in my life right now?
Right. How do I put that together? Right.
Because you think you're going to live, you think you're going to live forever.
Right. Yeah.
And it's just not even a thought. Even nowadays, like, I think, as I prepare for marriage, I've thought about it a lot, about what that means to spend your life with someone, and then to end your life with, and that's been an interesting thought. But otherwise, I don't normally think about that every day. Like, I don't wake up going, okay, today if I die.
Yeah. I remember at 12, so I think it was somewhere around 12 or 13, I had this existential crisis. My poor mom, I can only imagine how she was trying to figure this out. But this was also about the time, I think, that not just as I was entering my teenage years, but I was starting to put together some of the things that we profess in our faith, that I was hearing at church, and it was probably Lent, if I remember correctly. And so I was actually putting all these pieces together, kind of going to Calvary with Jesus in my head. And for the first time in my life, I remember thinking that that's me too. That my life has an end date. I don't know what it is. I don't know when it is, but there's going to be an end. And so I do remember, and I eventually kind of came out of it with kind of a renewed sense of hope. But I look back on that moment, and I think about kind of the graces that were being given, where the Lord kind of allowed an opportunity to peel back the veil and say, well, Christopher, this is not going to be forever, right. Or I should say, earthly life won't be forever.
Right. Yeah.
But that's also where we get the opportunity to remember our mortality, and to realize that we have a limited amount of time in which to bring our lives to fulfillment, because there is a sense in this life that we are called to be fulfilled, not in filling up our appetites, but in realizing that this isn't it.
Sure.
And so that fulfillment for us as Christians actually goes beyond the grave. Right? It goes beyond the grave. In fact, the book of Ecclesiastes talks about that. Remember also your Creator in the days of your youth, before the dust returns to the earth as it was, and the spirit returns to God who gave it. So even long before the coming of Jesus Christ in the flesh, there was this sense that our spirit, our soul, returns to God at some point.
Yeah, that is admittedly one of my favorite parts about Ash Wednesday is remember that you are dust, and to dust you shall return. And it's like, ooh.
Yeah, I typically use that refrain. There are two options: repent and believe in the gospel, or turn away from sin and be faithful to the gospel. But then also remember that you were dust, and then to dust you shall return.
Yeah. Well, that whole imagery of, for me, I don't know if this is official, but for me, it's the imagery of Adam being made from the clay, from the ground.
Yeah.
And this is where you come from.
Yep.
And this is where you return.
That's correct.
Like, that's my favorite part. Yeah. It's not just like, God made us out of the clay.
If you think about it too, like, God certainly could have created us from nothing.
Yeah.
He could have just snapped his proverbial fingers and there we were. But no, he actually made us from that which he had created.
Yeah.
And so there is this notion of us returning back to that which we were, from which we were created.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that from which we were created, that dust that has formed, the clay of the ground that he formed man out of, was imbued with the divine breath, with the ruah, if you want the Hebrew word. And so we are ensouled by God, and we're not just kind of these zombies, if you will, that don't have the capacity to love, don't have the capacity to aspire, don't have the capacity to be fulfilled.
Right.
No, we actually are given the gift of reason, and that's part of the way that our souls are constructed, so that we can actually see beyond the finitude, the finiteness of our life.
And the actual tradition and customs that come with burial these days, going back to the earth. 90, I would venture to say 90% of I made that up. I made that number up, but
a large number
of people are buried in a casket in the ground, except for if you're in New Orleans and they bury you up. It's another thing, but
you're entombed.
You go into the ground, and even those who are cremated, and not in the church, but there is a tradition often of scattering their ashes.
which is not what we do.
Sure. But even that whole sense is scattering your ashes back into the earth.
There's a sense of trying to return.
Right. And so even though it's not a practice that we as Catholics do, even in that practice there's this idea of returning back to where there is a desire, and you could almost say there is a desire for us to very much allow our finiteness to be completed on this earth, right? And so that's where burial of the dead, like I've often told folks who are talking about burial and what should we do, is that's really what makes us different from every other creature on earth. We are the only creatures, because we are imbued with a rational soul, that desire to bury our dead. Yeah.
We do that because we recognize that there is a reverence in returning our dead to the earth, right? And returning our dead to the elements. And even certainly as Christians, the notion of returning ourselves to wait for the Lord. And we'll talk about that in just a second. But first, we should remind you that we are the Catholic Underground. That's right. That upbeat music reminds you that we are the Catholic Underground. I'm Father Chris, joined by Kathleen, and then of course we've got Jeff and Ed up in space. Our picks of the week are coming up, but we're just going to continue to talk about death and dying, because we have moved our way into the month of November, which is traditionally given over to remembering our beloved dead, those who have gone before us, marked with the sign of faith. There's kind of a general definition of death that we sometimes don't think about, because of course the soul is not visible to us, right? We can't see our soul. There's really no measurement tool for it. And I'm looking at you, Eastern philosophy practitioners. No, there's really no way that you can see the soul unless it is a special gift that's granted to you by God, And so oftentimes if you're talking about the soul, it can be read, but it can't be seen, right? So St. Padre Pio could read souls, right? That was a gift that was given to him in the confessional. So death is the separation of man's mortal body and his immortal soul. So our body is mortal. Our soul is immortal. It cannot be killed, right? It cannot. Even before the death of the body, our soul has always been made immortal, because that's God's animating principle within us. That's what makes us us, right? It's not my thick eyebrows. It's actually my immortal soul.
You have some very nice eyebrows.
Aw, shucks. You say that to all the priests with eyebrows. And so this separation that we would call death, the separation of the body from the soul, comes to all men as a result of original sin. Right. And it's important to note that. So you can look at Genesis chapter 2, verse 17, Genesis 3:3, Genesis 3, verse 19, in the Book of Wisdom, and then even, of course, in St. Paul's letter to the Romans, chapter 6, for the wage of sin is death, but the free gift of God is eternal life in Christ Jesus our Lord. So death comes to us as a result of original sin. That original sin of selfishness, of turning away from God, brought about the reality of death. But we also recognize that death is a temporary state. And I think in our modern world, sometimes we get that, we just don't think about it, as you say. We don't think about death. And we think that death is a permanent state. So that's oftentimes why we try to, rather than live fulfilled, we just live for the moment.
Right.
And we do whatever we want.
Yeah, because it's very much just this. There's no connection.
Yeah, if I'm going to be dead for, a really long time, or maybe forever, and that's that. Yeah. Well, then I'm gonna suckle as much as I can out of the appetites that of the earth, and no, we believe that death is a temporary state. For at the end of the world, when it's all said and done, all men and women shall rise again to be judged by Christ. Yeah. And we'll talk about judgment in another episode, but that's what we believe, that death is temporary. And we also believe, too, that the whole person, body and soul, will be rewarded for the good or evil that they have done, body and soul, in this life. So whenever God tells us in the book of Deuteronomy, and Jesus repeats that we must love the Lord our God with all our mind, with all our soul, with all our heart, and with all our strength. I mean, the Shema prayer, very good, nicely done. Then that's what we're saying, is that we believe that death is temporary, we will be judged, and then we will be recompensed, if you will, for what we did, either good or evil. Yeah. And that's where we talk about resurrection. And we believe, and we'll talk about this in a subsequent show, that we believe in the resurrection of the body, that whether saved or damned, we will be resurrected. Yeah. And that's kind of chilling to me. Yeah. To think about, Yeah. Yeah,
absolutely.
But as it goes, it's important to always keep death before us. Saint Benedict talks about that, and in his 4th chapter of his rule, he talks about what the instruments of good works are. So we know, like, the corporal and spiritual works of mercy, right? To bury the dead is a corporal work of mercy. It's a work of mercy, reaching down into someone else's situation without their ability to repay you and desiring good for them, right? That's a work of mercy.
Right. And so, corporal being like of the body, right?
Of the body, yeah.
It's like all the physical needs of someone.
That's correct, right? Yeah. So instructing the ignorant, visiting the sick, visiting the imprisoned. Those are all corporal works of mercy, because they are concerned with the body, because we are bodily, right? And then of course you have the spiritual works of mercy. But one of the things that Saint Benedict says is that in order to do an instrument of good works, we must keep death daily before our eyes. Yeah. And to do that, we are called to meditate upon death regularly. And that's actually part of the life of the church, is to constantly at least give some of our thoughts over to the fact that one day I will die. Yeah. One day I will die and have to give an account.
Yeah. Which sounds super morbid.
It does.
When you think about it. But I mean, but it's practical. And in a spiritual sense, in a corporal sense, right? Yeah. To think about where is this heading?
Right, exactly. And that's also why we are called to have a healthy fear, right? As a in a sense, a reverence for the day of judgment, right? To dread the fact that we could end up in hell. To desire eternal life with all the passion of the Holy Spirit present within us. These are ways that we keep death always before us. Right. And so if we keep death before us, then we're going to guard over the actions of our lives. Yeah. And that's one of the things in the Rule of Benedict, to keep constant guard over the actions of your life, because our actions have consequences. Our actions have effects. Yeah. They have reactions, and some of those can last into eternity.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's something that we don't always think about. So what is it? What is the here? We've been talking about this. What is the here and now? How does this affect me right now? Yeah. And that I think is always the hard thing to teach about sin, is that, especially if it's a lot of young people, well, if it doesn't affect other people, it just affects me. Well, then, but
then it can't be that bad.
That's when you start to look at, okay, what is the eternal effect of your actions?
Correct.
That you may not know until
the day of judgment, right?
Yeah. I mean, you should know what they are, but that you don't automatically see. It's like having an illness that you don't see.
It's there, but you can't measure it.
And you don't feel it, but it's killing you from the inside, and there's no symptoms. And personally, I'm a type 2 diabetic. And that was one of my biggest complaints was, thankfully, but not thankfully, I'm not symptomatic. But when I went into the doctor, he was like, yeah, these bad things are happening. And I was like, I don't feel any, it's the same thing. We have this illness that is killing us from the inside that sometimes we may not see.
And that we have an antidote for, you know, and that's the thing is the reason that the sacraments of the church exist are not only to keep death in front of us, but also to begin providing the antidote now.
Yeah.
And that's really what we're talking about here is that Jesus enters into all of this, and he doesn't just kind of leave us and hang us out to dry and say, well, I'll conquer death, but all you have to just worry about death, okay? Yeah. Worry about it a lot. No, he actually enters into it with us even today through his church. St. Julian of Toledo, who was a 6th century bishop, said, everyone fears death of the flesh. Few fear death of the soul. All are preoccupied with the coming of the death of the flesh, which sooner or later certainly must come. And for this they weary themselves. Destined to die, humankind struggles to avoid dying, and yet, destined to live forever, they do not labor to avoid sinning. Oh, that we could incite humankind, ourselves included, to be lovers of everlasting life as much as they are lovers of the life that passes away. And I think that's really what it is. Like, even though the soul cannot be killed, it can be effectively killed, right?
Yeah.
It can, the soul can be completely just obliterated from the inside out, so that it does not desire God for eternity. And that's the soul that goes to hell, is one that has been so corroded with the things of the world and so corroded with sin that it doesn't desire heaven. It doesn't desire beatitude. And so that's why we keep death before us, so that we know not only are we finite beings, but that there's more to the story than just lying in the earth or lying in our coffin, you know, which is, of course, I think why so much of popular culture is obsessed with death and dying and zombies and, you know, mutations and vampires and all of that. But, of course, we'll have to go to the other side of the break to talk about all of this. It's the Catholic Underground. Stick with us. We'll be right back after this. Hail, Holy Queen, Mother of Mercy, our life, our sweetness, and our hope. To thee do we cry, poor banished children of Eve. To thee do we send up our sighs, mourning and weeping in this valley of tears. Turn then, most gracious Advocate, thine eyes of mercy towards us, and after this our exile, show unto us the blessed fruit of thy womb, Jesus. O clement, O loving, O sweet Virgin Mary. Alrighty, welcome back to the Catholic Underground, online all the time at CatholicUnderground.com. I'm Father Chris Decker, joined by Kathleen Lee. Up in space, we got Jeff Blackwell and Ed Ball. Jeff, you doing okay up there?
I'm doing great, Father.
Glad to hear it.
Yeah, I'm loving this conversation, by the way.
Yeah, it's always good to keep death before us. Jeff went a little too close to it, I think, for my taste.
I was knocking on the door there, but...
Well, let's not do that again.
No, the Lord says, look, hey, there's still stuff to do there. Now, you know, just...
That's exactly right.
Anyway, it was...
I find it interesting too that you know, Jeff, as you did knock a couple of times, or rapping on that door to death, to be able to come back and sit among us and say, you know what, I have kept death before me. I know it's a reality.
Yes.
But at the same time, I know there's stuff I got to live for.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that's the greatest thing that I learned is the time that I have left to make the most of it instead of getting wrapped up in the things that really don't matter. Yeah, it's important to make a living, but hey, family is more important. You know, spend time with those grandkids and great-grandbabies.
That's exactly right.
You know, and soak up the family as much as you can. And then point the way to Christ. That's what we're really called to do, all of us.
That's right.
You know?
Well, like St. Julian of Toledo says, would that we could incite humankind to be lovers of everlasting life. And that's really why we're called to keep death before us, so that we can become a beacon of hope, not only for others, but to ask the Lord to manifest hope in our lives, you know?
For sure.
So we do love lists, as you remember.
Yes, indeed.
And so we thought we'd dive into one of our favorite lists, 5 benefits to remembering our death. That notion,
Ta-da!
5 benefits, yeah. So memento mori
Right.
is a Latin phrase that means remember your death, right?
Remember that you must die.
Yeah, exactly.
Come on now.
I love it. I love that. I remember the first time I ever saw it, I was like, that's morbid, you know, but I love it. And I love that this is part of our faith. This is what we, you know.
And that's actually why we typically bless graves on All Souls Day.
Right.
Some parishes will do them, like ours, like mine, will bless graves as close to All Souls Day as we can. But people, I'm sorry to say this, but folks will only come out to the cemetery on Sunday when Mass is attached. It's hard to get, I've tried. It's hard to get people to actually come out to the cemetery on All Souls Day. I have celebrated Mass before on All Souls Day in the cemetery, which is one of the things that traditionally you're supposed to do. But 2021, it's hard to get. We have cars. We have the ability to move from place to place. And yet to get people to come out for something that's not on their established radar or vector, it's really hard to do. So so the way that we kind of anticipate it is by blessing graves on the weekend.
Father, you going to live stream that? The blessing of the graves?
Well, we did it today.
You did?
Yeah, we did.
You live streamed it?
No, I didn't live stream
Oh.
No, I just did it.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
If anybody was going to live stream it, would have had to have been me, but my hands were full.
You had some things to do.
I had an aspergillium and an aspersorium.
Yeah.
There's your Latin phrases to go Google.
Oh, I love that.
I had some Asper cream, so there's that.
Well, all right.
Yes, indeed.
That's what I needed afterwards,
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you know, I think about, I have a dear friend, Father Brent, that for some reason, we talk about what my funeral is going to look like. I made it very clear that, you know, I don't want any of the... I'm a little different. I mean, this is a little contrary to what we're, you know. I was like, I want people to mourn me. I want people to be sad.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want all black. I don't want any of this, like, let's all wear bright colors to remember. I want veils. I want people crying. I said, don't play any on Eagles Wings unless people aren't crying. And then you pull that sucker out because that makes everybody cry.
Well, I think one of the things that we think, because we're afraid of looking at death, is that we think because we have hope of resurrection, we ought to liturgically skip over mourning. We should skip over our sadness. And that actually can have a detrimental effect. The funeral rite of the church is to give us hope in the midst of mourning.
There you go.
Right? In fact, St. Paul's letter to the Romans, we do not mourn like the pagans who have no hope.
Yeah.
But whenever we really do mourn the death of our loved ones, and that's why traditionally in the Catholic faith, the black, the kind of the color of the inside of the coffin, you know, is a reminder to us, and oftentimes people wear the mourning color, MOURNING color of black. That's why priests wear black. Actually, our habit, our cassock, is supposed to be an indication that this life is fleeting. This is not it.
Yeah.
There's something that's coming after this. And so the priest for many hundreds of years now has donned the color of death, if you will, to give folks a signpost to say, okay, come to the priest, come to me, and I will give you the medicine of immortality that Christ dispenses to you from his own priesthood.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, and so, you know, while we sometimes can talk about death and mourning, sometimes the idea of death, or especially those who might be facing death, it can be pretty sometimes can be depressing.
Yeah.
Right, but it's also, as we've been talking about, this idea that it can be quite motivating. You know, that we remember. And not that we are morbidly obsessed with it, that every day, every minute we're thinking about, this could be it.
That may mean you're a teenager.
Right, a little bit emo. But, you know, that to remember, yes, memento mori, remember that we will die. We must die. That is part of life. It's guaranteed. You know, what is it? Death and taxes. You're going to die.
That's right.
And, you know, as we talked about, many of the saints talk about death. but the point is that when we remember it, when we talk about it, when we prepare for it, it helps us live a more Christian life.
That's right.
A life more aligned with Jesus, who ultimately gave his life.
Yeah.
And I think we think about that. I think for me, it's kind of a struggle to think about. We talk about how think about the death of Jesus all the time, but I don't always enter into that idea that he prepared for it as a human being. Yeah. Like, I mean, he knew what was coming afterwards, but like there was an end, and so,
but he knew, but did he know? I mean, he's God, he knows everything, but he did experience the trepidation of what was coming up, right? The agony in the garden. Part of the agony is contending with the end of his earthly life, and that gives me great solace that even our Lord knew what had to transpire, and it filled him with agony.
Yeah. So as we think about our death, as we remember that we too must die, there are 5 benefits to reflecting on the fact that you're going to die, to thinking about it. And one of them, number 1, is the use of time. And time is a precious resource nowadays. It's either I don't have any time, which is the majority of life. Our time is split between a million different places. We use up all of our time in the day. We don't spend enough time sleeping. Time is a precious commodity. And
to say nothing of prayer.
Yeah, right? Yes. And a moment, it's interesting, a moment once possessed, once it's occurred, can never be recaptured, can never be, this time that we're spending together, we can never get back.
That's right, no. Right? We can only move forward in the timeline.
And the idea that once we are born, we begin to die. And what we do, we talked about that, what we do with our time can last for an eternity. And so we have a limited quantity of time, and none of us knows when that time is up.
That's right.
And so, we could live for another 20, 30, 50 years, and today could be our last day. We could
we have no way of knowing. Yeah. I mean, that's the way it was with Jeff. Like, one day he's on the radio with us, and the next day he's in the hospital surprising everyone, and that's very true. Just being aware of the use of our time. I mean, like you say, for whatever in divine providence is Jeff's back,
right,
and thank God he is. Huh? I know Diane is Jeff's Diane. Is probably shaking her head or nodding her head. Yeah.
Oh yeah. We still. It's been out of the hospital for over a year, and we still talk about occurrences and things where the Holy Spirit was really speaking to her.
Yeah.
And giving her an assurance. I got to tell you, if this has just been such a profound experience in my life that it has made a difference for my remaining days.
Yeah, that's right. And that kind of it can enliven our spirit, right? It can enliven us and give us a sense of joy. Yeah. I know I've celebrated a couple of funerals recently where one of the family members said, our beloved was looking forward to death.
Yeah.
Because he had this little inkling, this little momentary vision that was given to him by the Lord, and he wanted to go back. He wanted to experience that, and so that actually helped put the rest of the family at ease. Because he doesn't normally talk about all these things, but the fact that he was so longing for eternal life, is a good sign.
Yeah, it was Saint Pope John Paul II who said, "Let me go to my Father's house." And when I think about death, I'm like, that's what I want to be able to say at the end. Is let me go
to my Father's house. And it's interesting. That's a very loaded statement, right? Because Jesus is talking about, in my Father's house there are many dwelling places, but that's also what the prodigal son said. I know I will rise and go to my Father, because he will care for me, even though I don't deserve to eat the pig food. I will run and go to my Father. And we also know that towards the end of his life, Pope St. John Paul II was going to confession very often. He was partaking of that medicine, that spiritual medicine, the sacraments of healing, and certainly the Eucharist, the medicine of immortality. That's actually what scrubs the soul clean, right? Reconciliation in the Eucharist. Yeah. That's what gives us a desire to present our souls to the Lord, right, unblemished. So making the use of our time. That's part of the way we do it is in the sacramental life of the church.
Yeah, absolutely. Number 2, a holy fear. Now, if you read Matthew 25, which is the sheep and the goats, which is my favorites. Are you a sheep or are you a goat? Which one you are? This passage should strike a holy fear into your heart. And, we talk about fear and a holy fear. What's that all about? But and we're going to talk about this, we are going to be judged in our works. Yep. And so, we've talked about this. We are not saved by faith alone. It's what we do. And so, at the end of time, at the end of our time, are we going to be the ones where he says, depart from me, you who are cursed, into eternal fire? Are we going to be a goat? No. Or are you living in such a way that you can be confident that Jesus is going to say, well done, good and faithful servant, right? Your life proves what is in your heart. Your life proves, you prove with your life what you believe.
That's right. And we believe that our deeds and our words are part of the things that we're going to have to answer for.
Yeah.
It's important to note that we're not going to get to the end of our lives and be surprised, I think, that Jesus says, depart from me.
Yeah.
Or maybe we will, but the notion is that if I have filled myself with my own appetites, and if I have not, of course, the sheep and the goats story is about the spiritual and corporal works of mercy. I was hungry and you gave me no food. I was thirsty, you gave me no drink. We can cry out, Lord, Lord, but if we have so filled ourselves with these kind of antidotes, with these medicines that just fill us up, right?
Yeah.
Then that have no ability to save us, then the Lord is going to say, depart from me, not because he wants to cast us out of his sight, but because we've shown by our life that we don't want to be there.
Right, yeah.
And it's hard for us to imagine that that's a state that we can grow into.
Right.
But the more selfish we become, the more we become convinced that we are our own God.
Yeah.
And the more we are convinced that we are God, the more we do not wish to serve anyone, including God.
Well, yeah, that's always the question: is why does God send someone to hell? Oh no.
Yeah, that's not how that works.
He doesn't just arbitrarily say, "I don't really like you and you're ugly. Get out of here."
Yeah, no,
right?
God is not like a high school cheerleader.
It's we who make that choice, And so the idea is to live well so that you can die well. To have that holy fear in your life of what could could be. Number 3 is live with no regrets. Regrets. This is like, how would you live today if you knew that it was your last day on earth? That's always the question. If you knew today was your last day, what would you do?
I probably would have had those extra calories.
Yeah. Yep. But like, why don't we do that in, every day? If it doesn't matter if we know that today is the last day or not.
Yeah.
Are we living with no regrets? Now that's a pretty popular, idea.
But we typically mean something different in our secular world.
Right.
Huh?
The secular world is like, oh, do what you want, live your life, do you, boo boo. Like that's how it works.
Yeah, because it's all going to be over.
Yeah.
So
it doesn't really matter, but it does. And so this is the opposite, of that meaning. Do we live our life as Christ calls us to every day? Can we look back on our life and say, I loved with the heart of Jesus.
Yeah.
I served with the heart of Jesus. I went to the sacraments. I was united with Christ in my life here, and I have no regrets.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, is that oftentimes our modern world, because it doesn't see things in light of eternity, it examines things by the little itty-bitty pinhole light of what's in front of us. But we are called to examine our lives in the light of eternity.
Right.
We know that on the other side of this veil that we call life, there is eternity.
Yeah.
And it's either eternity with God or eternity apart from him.
Yeah.
And do I live every day? And I wish I could say that I do. There are some days that I get to the end of the day and I make that little examination of conscience and I go, Lord, I really did not live for you today. Yeah. This was my last day. I would have to beg the mercy of your court because I don't know. I mean, you know, I maybe perhaps am not in the state of mortal sin, but I did not live for you today.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I wasn't a. So there's oftentimes when I look at my day and my weeks and I say, Lord, I was not a Christian. I was not someone who could be identified as a follower of you for sure. Yeah. And number 4 kind of goes along with that is
this is interesting. I don't know if I've ever thought about this before.
Yeah. Do you leave a legacy of love or a legacy of pain? And so every one of us leaves behind a legacy. When we die, there is a way we will be remembered. Yeah, there's a way that we're going to be remembered. And sometimes it's of pain, of broken relationships, of bitterness, resentment, spite, all these things, you know, I always think of the old lady who dies in like a movie and they're like, oh, she was a crotchety old lady. And we're like, we're super glad she's gone. But sometimes we all have those people in our life that when they died, there's nothing.
We experienced their death.
There's nothing, there's no memory that you can say where you can think of that say that they were a bad person. Like it's warmth and love and kindness. And so, you know, how do they, like, even not only just their family, strangers, enemies, people that they didn't really like, they always spoke well of and spoke well to and treated to. So how, I would like think about that right now. If you were to pass right now, how would people remember you? And so, you know, as we are leaving a legacy and looking at how we have treated other people, because isn't that the second part to the greatest commandment, to love one another, right? And
to love everyone as our neighbor. That's really hard to do. You know?
And so in the same vein, reconciliation is also a matter to consider. Right? Are there places in your life that need to be reconciled, that need to be healed? And so, you know, what a great gift those who know they're dying have in order to receive the sacrament of reconciliation. But are we frequenting that? You know, are we saying, oh, no, I'll deal with that. I'll go later. And then something happens. You know, don't delay. Do it. Go to reconciliation on a regular basis. Seek the forgiveness, but also give forgiveness even when it's not asked for.
That's right.
To people, so that, you know, that legacy can be one where people say they were so forgiving and so
I did
merciful.
Nothing to deserve their forgiveness, but they gave it. I like that. The grudge does not matter in the grave. But you see, here's the deal about grudges too, is that the legacy that you leave may be the occasion for somebody else to persist in sin. You know, if I was a complete stinker and the example that I gave you was to follow my bad example, then I could certainly be responsible for the life that you lead even after my death. And so, I mean, I always think of like the Boy Scouts. You know, the Boy Scouts always say that you leave the campsite cleaner than you found it. And in a sense, that's what, as Christians, what we're called to do. We're called to make holy the mundane. We're called to get into the real sticky stuff of everyday life and to allow it to be transformed, claimed for Christ, like we're staking claim on a new continent. Every aspect of our lives, business, personal, private, public, in any way, we're called to stake that claim for Christ and to leave it His better than we found it. So that our legacy is not just for our own glory and how we're remembered, but that our legacy actually helps to build disciples even after we're gone. That's the whole point of it.
And you know,
speaking of disciples.
Speaking of disciples, number 5 is the idea that we are aiming for sainthood, and that's a tall order. Like
that's why we celebrate All Souls Day, because we recognize that not everyone yet is known to be a canonized saint, and we don't presume sainthood. On any of us. We don't, by the way, presume heaven for any of us. That we don't make that presumption.
And so our life here on earth is short. So even if you live to be 150 years old, which God bless you if you do. But our life here on earth is short, and eternity is very long. It's forever. forever. And in the end, there's only one thing that's really worth living for, and that's holiness.
Yeah.
Right? And that
being
really,
set apart for Christ.
Right. And really worth living in is holiness, right? We can live our life a million different ways, right? But what brings, meaning and just meaning to our life is the idea of holiness and striving for sainthood and striving for what comes next. And we talked about this whole show. Sometimes it's really hard to think and look past. But that's what it's all about, and that's what the Lord is calling us to, right? Christ comes and says, here, live like this. It's going to be difficult, right? I tell people, my kids all the time are like, that's really hard, and he was Jesus. And I was like, yeah, he didn't come and say, look, this life going to be super easy.
That's right.
Don't
Become
worry
my
about
disciple
a thing.
and
right?
no longer suffer.
Yeah.
That was the temptation in the desert, right? If you just bow down and worship Satan, you don't have to go to the cross, and you'll be able to fulfill the mission you came for. That's it's the age-old thing.
Yeah. And when I look at the saints, my favorite saints are those saints that were like so imperfect it wasn't even funny. And there were
plenty.
Maybe they weren't like levitating or bilocating or they were just living ordinary simple lives, and they lived them well for Christ. We've talked about Carlos Acutis, like he normal teenager, had a love for the Eucharist, didn't heal people and raise people from the grave. He just lived life, and that's what we're called to do. And sometimes we're like, that's really hard, I'll never be a saint. Yes, you can. Right? Yes, you can. And that's what we're
that's
called
the goal
to. Right? Yeah. Is the idea that,
and that, of course,
called to holiness.
That's, of course, why we celebrate All Saints' Day and why we have devotions to the saints, because the church, after significant scrutiny, has said, yep, not only are their lives worth emulating, but we believe that they are in heaven and that they are actively interceding for you so that you can get to be where they are, near to the heart of Christ in eternity. And that's what the saints are. They're the ones who are actually kind of like they're egging us on. Right. Yeah. Egging us on. Yeah. Dogging would be talking down about. But they're egging us on. They're encouraging us, right? And they encourage us with their intercession. They encourage us with their prayers, and they encourage us just by examining their life. Like as you say, some of the saints got put through the ringer. But what made them saints was that they desired heaven more than they desired the pity party of this earthly life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So all these things that we talk about, death and life, is wrapped up in the idea that life is a gift, and death, of course, is inevitable. So what should we do? Live for eternity. Love Jesus, love others, forgive, be forgiven, seek forgiveness, give sacrificially, be humble, pursue the supernatural life of sanctity, of holiness, and anything less than that is a waste of time. Time that we don't have. So in short, live as if you were a dying man, because you are. We are.
Mori.
Memento Mori.
Right. Yeah, very good. Well, that's a little meditation there on death for you as you move into the month of November, as of the time of this recording. If you're watching us in a time warp, well, it's always good to memento mori anyway. It's also good also to go to that part of the show that we like to call
the CU Pick of the Week.
Too many alsos. Kathleen, for your pick of the week.
You don't want to go to Olivia? No, she's
not. No, Olivia is searching high and low for her pick of the week. That's why we gave her the night off.
In your face, Olivia, I get to go first. I am going to pick, this is a new nail polish. I love a good nail polish. Now, I don't try a lot. I usually stick with a brand called OPI because I think it's the best. Now, somebody did say, and if ladies out here, guys, I know you don't deal with this, but usually when you get a red, I'm not wearing it right now, but I'm wearing another red, an OPI red. When you take this off, it looks like you have murdered your fingernails.
No.
It bleeds all over the place. It stains. It's really bad. Right. This red, now this is Olive and June nail polish.
Is that the
Olive
brand?
And June. Olive and June is the plant. What? The brand, not the plan.
Oh,
it's the plan, it's the brand. And this red, which I don't know what it's called, but it's the red one, it doesn't bleed. It just comes right off. It doesn't stain. And I've never found that in a nail polish. So I have tried this one and this one alone.
It, you know.
But yeah, I have it. We can do mayonnaise after the show. But I haven't used any of the other ones yet. But it's got good lasting power. It stays on for a good several days. Which I use my hands so much and wash them and hand sanitize that I usually chip and it gets crazy. But Olive in June, if you're looking for a good Christmas gift, I'm about to start with my Christmas gift list, people. This is a good little stocking stuffer. Olive in June.
All right. I painted my fingernails black once. And that was in high school. It was a long time ago. My pick of the week is The Essential Guide to Comic Book Lettering by Nate Picos, who owns Blambot Fonts. So I've been using these fonts forever.
Wow.
But he's also a well-known letterer, comic book letterer. And so he's got basically the lowercase b Bible on comic book lettering. Nice. It's really fascinating because those are kind of unsung things that you see in comic books, and yet you can't read one without lettering, right? And so how they tell the story, not just the pictures, not just the writing, but the actual lettering does it as well. So that's
and I'm sure I could say not to be confused with Comic Sans.
Comic Sans may never be used, except maybe to write a comic, and nobody does that. So. Your pick of the week, Jeff. You got one?
I just love to fire you up over that.
It's true. Comic Sans, it's easy to do. Yeah.
Mine is God is Not Dead, We the People. Just released this week. And you can actually watch it for free if you do a trial. If you don't have PureFlix, which is like $5 a month. And I have really been enjoying it because I can get The Chosen there, and they have terrific movies, too, that are family friendly. But God is Not Dead, We the People, ripped from today's headlines. It is an incredible, nice movie your family will enjoy, and you as a parent with school children.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, I like that there are some of these groups that are putting together a Netflix-like thing, but you don't have to worry about the search feature. You know, you can actually search for things. Yep. Well, as always, the Catholic Underground is made possible by people who search for us, by viewers, listeners, prayer warriors, and benefactors like you. You can become an official Undergrounder by navigating your computing device to catholicunderground.com/donate. You can also find out when we're on the air in your television market if you have Catholic TV or Catholic Faith Network or Catholic Live Television. And you can also help us out by letting others know about us. If you like Catholic Underground, tell folks. And remember to like us, heart us, and star us on your platform of choice. And if the podcasting service lets you leave a review and let people know why you like the Catholic Underground. We very much appreciate that. Our panelists this week have been, but one, Kathleen Lee. Here in the studio. And Jeff is always available for, he's always up there in the satellite pretty much.
Round and round we go.
That's right, exactly. Yeah, and then Ed Ball is our video director for this episode. Jim Hayes is our research assistant with his crew in the lab. Their noses to the proverbial grindstone. And you know me, I'm Father Chris Decker. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram if you want to see what I did for Inktober. You can do that at Digital Catholic is my handle. And you have been listening to the Catholic Underground. We have attempted to cut through the noise and find that still small voice. We will see you next time.
From the Catholic Underground.